tonight are Vice Chair Susan Verdicchio, Board members Jackie Welch and Mariano Goluboff. I believe Select Board member Amy Shapiro will be joining us as well, and also Lisa Wong, our town manager, is here. I don't know if there are any comments from the board members right now. Feel free to jump in.
I just want to thank our town clerk, Mary Ellen, and everybody in the town clerk's office. They've been doing a fantastic job with early voting for the last several days. And I know they have they have the rest of this week left, as well as then on Tuesday of next week, the election. And then they're also preparing for town meeting on the evening of the Thursday following the election next week. So just expressing my thanks to Mary Ellen and her whole office.
I'd like to second to also voice my support, as Mr. Goluboff so beautifully stated. I just wanted to encourage to not town businesses and restaurants, especially as the weather turns a little bit cooler, that many of them are very well set up, including with additional outside heaters as well as inside, but and also even blankets. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and also just to follow up with Jackie too, we've also the restaurants, we still have the spaces for takeout out front as well. So you can still call into the restaurants and businesses, and there's a spot waiting for you right out front to swing in and pick up. Are there any other comments from members of the board? Okay. Seeing none, I'll just announce our upcoming meetings. The next one is there's a tentative one for next Monday in regular session, November 2nd. So we'll do our best to not have that meeting unless absolutely necessary. And otherwise, we'll have our meetings before town meeting on Thursday, November 5th, and then we'll be in session at fall town meeting immediately after that. And we do expect town meeting to go for more than one evening, even though our agenda and the warrant is a little bit truncated. There's still some complicated items on there, and it will be held remotely as well. So we'll start off with the acceptance of donations as well. We'll take a motion for those.
Sure. So I move that we accept with gratitude donations to the Council on Aging, one in the amount of $420 given in appreciation for services received, and another for $1,000 from Winchester Hospital or Leahy Health Shared Services in support of community outreach.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
And Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0.
And then I move we accept with gratitude donations to the fire department, 2 in support of the Public Safety Memorial, $1,000 from the Firefighters Union, and $200 from the Tim and Jean Goss family, and also a gift of $404.30 donated by the Winchester Rotary Club to support costs for personal protective equipment.
All in favor? Take a roll call vote. Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, I'll take any matters from the audience. If there's anyone here that wants to speak about anything related to town business that is otherwise not listed on our agenda, hear from you now. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so we'll move on. And I think we'll move to the town manager's report next and comments.
Good evening, everyone. I want to begin with a firefighter promotion. So in accordance with section 4-2E of the town charter and in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Department of Personnel Administration, known as Civil Service, I've made the following permanent full-time promotional appointment in the fire department to David Sherwood, to a fire lieutenant in the Winchester Fire Department, and respectfully requesting that the select board waive the normal 15-day appointment period.
I move that we waive the 15-day waiting period for the promotional appointment of David Sherwood to fire lieutenant in the Winchester Fire Department.
Second,
All in favor? I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes, motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Right, congratulations, Lieutenant Sherwood. All right, I'm now sharing my screen with, this is the select board update for today. Just ignore the October 19th. That should say the 26th. Everything else has been updated. So beginning with the CARES Act. So the town is actually going to be submitting for the maximum allowed for Winchester, which is just over $2 million. In compiling from all the departments their anticipated expenses between now and December, their expenditures they've already made since March related to the COVID response, that is also either not funded by FEMA and or the 25% match to the FEMA reimbursement are actually total figures come just above this maximum amount. We're still doing a couple of calculations right now, but we're at just over $2 million. So it actually seems pretty spot on in terms of how much we've expended between March and December. So those figures, once we finalize them tomorrow, I will submit them to the state and hopefully we will get reimbursed fairly quickly. Business grants. So you've heard a lot about the 2 rounds the town has had for micro enterprises up to 5 employees. The state has come out with an additional round of grants. There's 2 of them. One is for businesses up to 50 employees. Another one is another micro enterprise grant for up to 5 employees. The application is open now. It opened on October 22nd and it will be closing on November 12th at noon. So it's a 3-week period. And I have put the eligibility details website. So empowersmallbusiness.org. And then you should see various links from there for the COVID-19 response and then the grant for these businesses. So we certainly want people to take advantage of whatever's coming down the line to help them with, certainly with the struggle that they have during this pandemic. I also wanted to give the board a heads up. Normally in November, December, the board starts thinking about the transfer station permits that are calendar year. They're not fiscal year, they're calendar year. So people will begin applying for those in a few months. The board usually reviews an analysis that we provide, which is being done right now, and then makes a recommendation moving forward. But I wanted to bring your attention to what we have known has been coming for a couple of years, actually, which is that our recycling contract is coming to an end. It actually will end next June 2021. So for the past several years, we know that we've been fortunate in paying a low fixed rate compared to other communities who've had their contracts expire. So unfortunately, we're seeing a pretty massive increase in the tonnage costs. So for example, we used to pay $10 a ton just a few years ago. But we have heard from surrounding towns that when they're going out to bid, they're paying between $90 and $125 per ton. So that's a tenfold increase. That's unfortunately that's pretty significant. So we started talking about ways to address this, and one of the ways that we're looking to address this is seeing if our existing contractor can help provide us with an extended option or blended rate. So basically what they're looking for is that we would actually increase the cost per ton that we're paying between November now and June. So we would actually be paying a higher amount than we would normally be paying sooner. However, we would offset that with a lower rate for another year in fiscal year 22. So it's sort of a pay now to save later option. So right now, we're the conversation is about increasing our current rate of $10.82 a ton to $50 a ton. That would cost an additional $32,000. FinCom has approved that expenditure, and they put it on their list of votes for fall town meeting. But then we would save money next year. So the net cost, or sorry, the net savings would hopefully be about $45,000 if you factor in the additional cost for this year and then the savings for next year. So I wanted to give a heads up on the board that that's being discussed right now. That'll just be one of the many, many things that you'll have to factor in the next few years when looking at the transfer station. If the $32,000 gets funded at town meeting, that will cover between November and June. But again, transfer station, prices are really for January through December. We also anticipate that a town meeting next year, we will probably be asking for various improvements to the transfer station. So I would say not this round, but maybe next year around this time, we'll have to be considering what kind of investments we want to make in the transfer station. We'll be looking at a series of recommendations and factoring that into, the permit fees or any other ways to pay for it. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. And then there's a whole list of project updates that you can see here. We have, I think one of the things that we're hopeful about is number 3. There's an ADA grant that we applied for $200,000 to kickstart the ADA transition plan. As you know, that's millions of dollars. This is a grant that does come out every year, but we wanted to, put in a first proposal. So hopefully, hopefully we'll see some funding coming in to help us implement the plan. Let's see some other highlights. The Swanton Street Culvert project is going out to bid in November. So hopefully that will start sometime next year. And obviously we're keeping an eye on projects to make sure that they're within our budget number. I know we've had a lot of emails about Wildwood Street. So that drainage improvement project is substantially complete, but there is some tree plantings and some final paving. So the pain is not over for some of the traffic diversions that we're seeing there. Any questions about anything in the report?
Yeah, Lisa, I have a question on the commercial fees that we charge for the transfer station. I know we slightly raised them last year, or maybe it was earlier this year. I don't know. 2020 seems to go for decades. But can we figure out how much we're charging compared to what other towns are charging for commercial? Because I seem to remember we're still significantly below anybody else, and that could really help bring some revenue.
Absolutely. So when we do the analysis, that'll be part of it as well.
Thank you.
So Lisa, I had a question about all the projects. And we're certainly busy with all of those, and maybe I just missed the memo on this, but with the high school, when last I heard, we were still waiting for the state to release its last reimbursement to us for the town, and I never really heard that had happened. So either if you know that, or if you could check into that for the next meeting, that I'd like to know more about that.
Absolutely, will do. I'll check into that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa, for the update. One of the things that we've been seeing lately as well, while we have a lot of projects that are being put out to bid, is that a lot of them are coming back very high. So it's a concern for us the longer that we put off projects, larger capital projects, that they're going to be costing us considerably more. And it seems like a lot of the traffic infrastructure work that we've been seeing as well has been increasing. So we try to get to as much as we can, and there's a lot of construction going on, but there's still that sense of urgency for us to move forward with projects because the goalposts keep moving. Every season we push off. So, Jackie, you're still muted.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. I didn't know if I should use the raise hand thing. I just a really quick question, and it's also I think would be helpful for our listening audience. Town Manager Wong, and thank you so much for that very enlightening report. But with respect to the transfer station, so, and I understand the financial differentials that thank you for providing, but is it fair to say that our goal continues to be to maintain the recycling? It's just that there's a price point now that's going to be different, that we're trying to figure out how to approach it. I mean, I just don't want there to be, and not to say that your report in any way would cause confusion whatsoever, but just so that we can make sure that we take the opportunity to be clear with anyone watching that it's not like we're going to discontinue the recycling, correct? It's just that we're going to try to figure out a way, although it's going to be a little trickier because of the financial differential, correct?
Right.
Absolutely.
We're state mandated as well. I mean, even so, we certainly will keep that going. I think it's just the market has shifted, and we had the benefit of the best negotiated contract in the state for a long period of time. And sometimes it's helpful, but then when you have a big move up, you've got to reconcile that with the rest of your budget. So that's where we are. But I think Lisa's been working on a full analysis and almost a kind of mini master plan for the transfer station because of our capital needs at the same time as our increasing costs on the open market. So
Thank you.
more of that. Thanks, Jackie. Any other questions or comments? So we'll move down to our business items. The first one on the agenda are we have 3 interviews for the Affordable Housing Trust. So I think that there were 3 applicants. There's still positions open for anybody that would like to apply. It's a new trust that was created in town meeting last year, and as the town's been focusing on affordable housing and investment in the future planning of the town, it's really an essential committee for us. So we're very eager to welcome new members to the trust. And I think I see a couple, Stacy Irizarry and Carrie Sue Barney are here. We'll take Stacy first, I think.
Hi.
Hey, Stacy, how are you?
All right, how are you?
Good. If you want to just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your interest in the Affordable Housing Trust.
Sure. I'm Stacy Rosari. I've lived in town for almost 11 years now on the west side. Go VO Owls. And I supported the creation of the trust at town meeting. Last year, I'm a town meeting member as well. And I've had a general interest in affordable housing in town, both for the kind of specific definition, state mandated definition of affordable, but as well as subsidized housing and maintenance and creation of possibly of more subsidized housing. So it's an interest of mine. And when I saw that the committee had been formed on the town website, I jumped at the chance to volunteer.
Great, thanks, Stacy, for your interest in the position. Are there any comments or questions from members of the board?
No, other than thank you for volunteering your time.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. And we all got your letter, and it sounds like you have some really good personal experience to bring to the committee. So thank you for volunteering.
Thank you. for
Yeah,
taking it.
Stacy, would you expect that there would be any conflict of interest with serving here?
I wouldn't even know what the conflict would be. I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stacy. So just to let everyone know, we'll have to take a vote on this at a later date while we're doing the applications and the interview process. There is a waiting period after the application process expires. So while we're interviewing, we'll point at our next meeting or the meeting thereafter, and then move forward from there. So if there are any other questions, I'll say thank you very much to Stacy for the application and your interest.
Yeah. Thanks for considering me. Thanks.
Thanks, Stacy.
Okay. Bye.
Next up, I see Carrie Sue Barney. Hi,
Hello.
Carrie Sue. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for applying to the Affordable Housing Trust and being willing to volunteer for the town. Just wanted to hear a little bit about your interest in the trust and maybe a little bit of the work that you do in the community.
Sure. I'm Carrie Sue Barney. I have also lived in Winchester 11 years. And I volunteer at various organizations throughout town, and I currently serve as the co-chair for the Anchor Society's social services. We opened a new food pantry recently, and we deal with food insecurity within Winchester right now, and other issues that come up with different citizens around town. And I thought that this was a great opportunity to further communication between that organization and this trust. And so it just seemed like the right time to do it. I think that all these organizations around town are really great about helping people, but I think that they often don't talk to each other. And one of my goals is to further that within the community in different ways. So this seemed like a good place to start.
Great. Thank you, Carrie Sue. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board?
Yeah, I'll ask the same question of everybody. Carrie Sue, thank you for applying. Do you envision that you would have any conflicts of interest with serving here?
Not that I can think of. Not knowing the exact ins and outs of what this position will entail. We do work with, Jack at some of the with some of the social services issues, but I would obviously recuse myself from anything where I felt there'd be a conflict, but I can't see it. I also volunteer for the Lincoln School Parent Association. I'm co-president there, but once again, I don't see an issue with that either.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think any of those would be a conflict. I'm looking more like if you would be a developer who would be applying for, an RFP.
No.
Okay,
Nothing.
thank you.
Although I have heard that the Lincoln Parent Association is a pretty tough group, so I don't know.
Sure.
If Enca were to bid on building a brand new building somewhere, then maybe.
I just wanted to thank you for all your volunteerism for the town. You do so many important things, and also thank you for volunteering for this important position.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, Carrie Sue, this is Amy Shapiro. I just wanted to thank you too. And I love what you said about the collaboration. I think that that's something that we need to do around town holistically. So I love that that's something that you're energized about. So thanks for bringing that up specifically.
Great.
Thanks, Carrie Sue. I don't see any more questions or hands raised. So we'll be in touch with you. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Calls from 1508367.
I think that the other applicant was Mike Queenan. I'm not sure if we were able to reach him. I don't see him on the list of attendees here. So we'll as I said, we'll be waiting to make these appointments anyway, so we'll have another opportunity for an interview. While we do reappoint members to committees without an interview, we typically, as part of our policy, we do like to bring people before the community when we are appointing new members. So we'll wait to hear from Mike, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. So we have a Eversource grant of location hearing at 8, and we're going to pick up the Woodside Road conversation right after that. So I know I see the outdoor dining on there as well while we have a few more minutes. Lisa, I know this isn't a probably not a long one, more of an update to see where we're at with the outdoor dining.
So actually, I'd like the board to consider extending the outdoor dining season to at least through the end of this month. So I think a lot of the applications had an end date of like sometime in October or even early November. So I thought it would be, fingers crossed that we might get some good weather. And we want to support outdoor dining as much as we can. We're doing our hardest to try to locate some outdoor heaters and get those to the restaurants. So the board, if the board could consider voting to extend outdoor dining to a later date, it could be, like I said, the end of this month, it could be the end of this year. Just your thoughts on that.
I guess the question that comes to my mind is what DPW thinks about that, because we might get snow, and how would we handle that?
Yeah. So Jay, I know you're on the line. I don't know if you want to answer that. I know we had discussed maybe I guess it's a guess when snow could come and what you can handle, but can you help answer whether the end of November would suffice, or whether you think we can push our luck and go a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Still there?
Yeah, I think Jay started talking, and I think we lost him altogether. So. So while we try to get Jay back, are there any other questions or concerns surrounding extending outdoor dining?
No, I mean, I just think I just was looking at the city of Boston is December 1st for outdoor dining. So, I mean, if again, I would want to hear from Jay, but I'd be comfortable with, following suit there. And the governor extended it too. And I don't know if there was an exact date on that, but I'm comfortable with December 1st.
I agree with Ms. Shapiro.
Sounds good. Unless there are other questions, we'll take a motion to approve. Lisa, did you get a sense that there was anything else that the businesses needed from us going into the cooler weather?
Well, I think waiving the fees, certainly if we can think of any other fees that might come up that make sense to waive, we'll certainly bring that forward. Trying to get the outdoor heaters, trying to get the outdoor dining. We had negotiated with the MBTA to push off any use of spaces, but their project got pushed off anyway. So if I think some of the projects or some of the ideas that I've received are a little bit of a longer trajectory. So there's some calls for sort of better signage downtown, a directory. So I know some folks are working on that as well, working on kind of a better online presence. So there's a couple of things that are sort of ongoing projects, but I think in the meantime, we kind of did a bit of like a takeout promotion. Remember that, Amy, at the very beginning, trying to get folks to do that. So we'll probably work on creative ways to help people through the winter by doing some marketing, advertising, some, basically whatever we can do.
I just wanted to note, as far as like actually dining out, and not the takeout, that hopefully the restaurants will continue to use their own creativity as well, not only with the heaters, but the other day I bought a blanket, and that was perfect. So maybe there's some other creative ideas that they'll put into effect. And or maybe there could even be a fundraiser along those lines, like a Winchester blanket or something. But in any event, not to take up more time with that, but it seems like there are some creative options. So hopefully the restaurant owners will be encouraged to try to think of more and keep implementing the ones that they are. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. It's Jay Gill. I'm back on.
Jay, while you were away, the board discussed December 1st as a recommended date to extend outdoor dining. And they wanted to know if that was going to provide any issues for plowing or any other DPW issues you can think of.
Sure, it shouldn't be a problem. I think if it does become we get a major snowstorm, we'd have to make arrangements. But in the past few years, history has, we haven't got much snow in November and December. But I think we'll be fine with that. And also, just to let you know, we got 4 heaters delivered to the DPW for the restaurants. We're going to be delivering them to the 2 restaurants that are going to get their heaters tomorrow.
Good. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
So,
sounds like December 1st. Yeah. Thanks, Susan.
So I'll move that we extend the end date of the outdoor dining period to December 1st,
Second.
2020.
Can we add to that we're also extending the extension of premises for the purposes of liquor licenses, as well as outdoor dining?
Okay, and the period for the premises extension for the purposes of alcoholic beverage licenses?
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes?
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me. The motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Thank you. We'll go right into our hearing under item G for Eversource grant of location to install approximately 10 feet of conduit within the public right-of-way. And this is at 83 Salisbury Street. So I will open the public hearing. Beth, I see that you're here.
I am, yes, thank you.
And I see.
Can you hear me okay?
Duffy. Yep, and Jacqueline Duffy is here as well. So Beth, if you wanted to start us off.
Sure. So yes, as you mentioned, we have a grant location petition from Eversource to install approximately 10 feet of conduit in the public right-of-way to provide underground electrical service to the home at 83 Salisbury Street. DPW and engineering have reviewed this and have no concerns. We recommend that the board move favorably on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Good evening, Ms. Duffy. Is there anything that you wanted to add about this request?
No, just that the customer is very anxious to get this done.
Okay, great. Thank you. Unless there are any other comments from members of the audience or the community, I will close. I'm not seeing any at this point, so I'll close the public hearing. And any comments or questions from members of the board? Okay. Seeing none at this time, I'll take a motion to approve the grant of location.
So I move that we approve a grant of location to Eversource to along the public way known as Salisbury Street to install approximately 10 feet of conduit within the public right-of-way as necessary to provide underground electrical service to the home at 83 Salisbury Street.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Jackie,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes?
Mariano,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me. The motion carries unanimously, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next, we will move to the Woodside Road follow-up. I'm not sure who wants to start on this one. Beth, I know that staff has been doing quite a bit of work on this since our meeting a week ago, and there's been some changes. I didn't know if we wanted to discuss those, and I do see that there are quite a few people that are attending in the audience too, and we'll give them a opportunity to ask questions and weigh in. Although this isn't a public hearing, it's still a just for the board to discuss.
150.
Sure. So I'm happy to give kind of a recap of where we were last week and where we are this week. As I mentioned during the meeting last week, Winchester received $175,000 from Eversource as part of mitigation for the 115 kV construction project. It's not actually a cash donation to the town, it's a reimbursement. So it's not cash that we have on hand. It's something that we would contract, pay for, and then submit reimbursement paperwork to Eversource. As part of the MOU that was negotiated between the town and Eversource, there was a kind of a umbrella put on the type of activities that could be used, the 175 could be used to cover. And so there are really kind of two categories. One was traffic calming. So the town had a kind of a corridor study completed in 2017 that looked at some conceptual designs for traffic calming in the Woodside and Wildwood Street corridor. And then the second piece was sort of landscape architecture improvements around Winter Pond. The town contracted with a landscape architect in 2017 to put together a master plan for that area. So both of those components, the traffic calming projects and the landscape components, taken as a whole, far exceed the $175,000 that the town has available to it through Eversource. So as discussed last week, we've worked with TTAC and spoken with the Friends of Winter Pond to try to prioritize some of those projects and recommend to the board how best to utilize that $175,000. As we discussed last week, TTAC had prioritized the speed humps and the Woodside Road corridor, sort of at the causeway between Big and Little Winter Pond. For the landscaping improvements, we were going to try to take several of the improvements that were part of the Andrew Leonard design and progress those through permitting, design, and construction. And then we also were looking to potentially prioritize the design of the intersection of Woodside at Wildwood Road. Last week, we had talked about also trying to implement a raised crosswalk at Woodside Road between Big Pond and Little Winter Pond. The board had asked us to get a revised proposal from Tool, who's the engineering firm we're looking to help us do this work, removing that. So that's what we did over the past week. So altogether, we were able to reduce the scope and the fee associated with that project, so that to do the speed humps and the landscape architecture work, we now have a proposal from Tool of $54,200 to complete that work. We were closer to $70,000 in the previous proposal. And we also have the additional $37,900 to complete the design for the Woodside at Wildwood proposal. So altogether, those three projects for design permitting would take us to approximately $92,100. So I think the staff recommendation at this point is to move forward with the design of all three of those components. So the Woodside at Wildwood intersection, the speed humps on Woodside, and then the landscape architecture component. We are recommending that we use $70,000 from the $175,000 we have allocated from Eversource, and then I will kick in the additional about $22,000 from my professional services budget to make up that gap to get us to that $92,000 scope. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments, answer any comments from folks.
Thanks, Beth. Really appreciate it. I know it's been a lot of work this past week, especially over the past few years that we've been trying to maximize this mitigation payment from Eversource. Jay, I didn't know if there's anything right now that you wanted to weigh in on. I'm sure there'll be some questions.
No, Mike, like I said, on the past meetings, that the DPW is committed, once Eversource gets through there and pave, to replace the sidewalk on the small pond side. It's bituminous hot top. We plan on making that concrete and tying into both sides of where it is concrete. So we are, the DPW is committed to do that as soon as we can. Excuse me.
Great, thanks, Jay. And also I see that Ben Keeler is here from TTAC. Ben, I know I see Ann Storer as well. So Ben, if you want to start out, I know that the TTAC and the Friends of Winter Pond have been engaged with us from the beginning on this. I remember some pretty cold days out there in the middle of the winter, taking a look at Winter Pond and the traffic there. And I know TTAC has spent some time on it too. I didn't know if you had any comments to add.
No, I mean, not much from me. I appreciate the opportunity to just provide a comment. We did have the opportunity, Roger Wilson, my co-chair, and I did have the opportunity to coordinate with Beth late last week after the select board meeting on Monday. And, we're generally aligned. I mean, the things that I'll just emphasize is, we were looking at the entire corridor. So, when it's presented as Wildwood and Woodside intersection versus, other improvements like the speed tables on the causeway itself, we understand that there's, again, we're trying to work with a lot of different stakeholders, and there's not enough money, but those two things were really the top of our list. So we're not necessarily trying to prioritize one or the other. We think that those two items really are sort of top ideas and things that we really want to see move forward. We do think that it'll improve safety and certainly support multimodal transportation, which includes, again, pedestrians and biking. We've had lots of conversations on this topic, within the committee, and again, supportive of Beth and Jay's recommendations and improvements. We'd like to certainly, put our rubber stamp on it. We think it's a great thing for the town, and would love to see us move forward, beyond simply design, but obviously to impact change and to move it all the way through construction.
Great, thanks, Ben. Are there any questions for Ben from members of the board? Okay, thanks, Ben. And Anne, I see that you're there as well. I don't know if you wanted to make any comments. Happy to jump in anytime you're ready. The board is ready.
I am on. Can you hear me now, Mike? I'm not.
Yes, I can hear you now, Ann. Yeah, thank you. I was hoping one of you there was going to talk. So
everybody for this really tough problem. And I guess my only question is, did you get my email?
I read an email about sort of laying out the history of all of these discussions and the work that's needed to maintain the two ponds. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Right. So I think the issue I'm just trying to stress is that we were never really explained to us that it was a traffic project at the end, and the landscape work that's left for $30,000 doesn't really do very much. We don't need a bench for $30,000 or, a bulletin board. So I think the town, if you're saying that the sediment drain is not to be considered as part of this, which is a desperate need for the pond, then you really need to consider the safety of the pedestrians on Big Winter side of the causeway, because you do not, there's no sidewalk there. And I'm just curious to know why that was not considered when you're looking at the overall plan for the whole corridor.
and when you say you're talking about the sidewalk in particular?
Well, the parking area and the sidewalk on Big Winter. what will happen when Eversource is finished. It was pretty much a disaster, and it's even worse now. So the design of that is really critical. To figure out, to slow the traffic, you need to figure out the width of the road, put a striping in, the width of the parking area, and then you would have the width for this people to pass by, so you're not intermingling pedestrians and parking. And you would also have a gap. You have a gap between, I think it's 2 houses up on Chesterford all the way to Wildwood. There's no sidewalk on that side of the road. So that was one of our
This
main.
is Beth. I can just jump in. That's part of what was included in the design that was looked at by Andrew Leonard, and that was obviously a conceptual level. And the goal with this proposal from Tool is to move forward with finalizing the plans for that, and certainly that parking area and pedestrian access through there, in addition to bringing back some native planting in that area, and discussion with Friends of Winter Pond in terms of what other priorities could be in that area, is what we'll use this proposal from Tool to accomplish during the design phase. So that's certainly the goal of what we have here.
So the goal is to do parking, but do you actually design the sidewalk? And can you execute?
So I think that's part of the conversation that we have to have, right? But the plan that was developed by Andrew Leonard back in 2017 was a concept level plan. And so this proposal we have in front of us from Tool includes several meetings where we will kind of gather input, work with folks to make sure that we're addressing kind of the key concerns, whether they're parking, pedestrian, boat access, no benches, native plantings. All of that will be discussed, and we'll pull that all together into a plan. And that's kind of the next step in the process once we can get into the design work.
There's no construction funds to do the work. It's just the design.
So the $70,000 we're proposing now is just for design and permitting. And then there'll be $105,000 remaining in that 175 allocation we have from Eversource. Once we get through the design and permitting, we'll have a better idea as to what the cost of these items will be and what we can fund with that remaining 105,000. And then we'll also try to seek out additional funding from, every possible way: town meeting, Chapter 90, roads and sidewalks, Concom, if there's any money available there. So, that's kind of we have to get through this design phase first to figure out what the kind of scope and the cost estimates are, and then we can figure out how to fund it.
Yeah, and this is Ben. I'll just jump in very quickly, just from a TTAC perspective. We did spend a lot of time looking at sidewalks, parking, and conditions along the big winter side as well. It was part of the original plan. Even as Beth mentioned, the landscaping plan called specifically for sidewalk work on that side. We weren't sure because of environmental reasons and other from a what's needed to accommodate all different people, including parking and other things. I mean, that kind of goes beyond our pay grade. So we did want to make sure that we were taking guidance from engineering and Tool and otherwise. We recognize that is a significant need. We are ready to get creative there on that side. But I do think that I just want to emphasize that TTAC does believe that a sidewalk on that side is a priority as well.
Mr. Chairman, it's Jay Gill. Also on the striping, once the Eversource project's done and they repave part of their tools would have to restripe Woodside Road, and we have 10-foot lanes that will be painted through the TTAC striping policy. So that would happen after the road's paved.
So can I just ask about this sediment drain? Because that seems to keep coming up. I think I'm calling it the right thing. This is for the little winter pond. Is that an expensive item? Or can we sort of put that on the list to do later if there's money left?
Yeah, so I think that's not, when you read the language from the MOU, that's not included in the write-up. So I don't believe that the funding from the 175 that we have can be used for the design or construction of that project. I know it's a priority for the Friends of Winter Pond, and I think it's certainly something that we as staff can work with them to try to move forward. It's something that likely would have to go through the capital process, but I know there is certainly concern for the amount of sediment that is getting to the pond. I know Jay has mentioned that they no longer use road sand in that area, so part of it is determining where that sediment is coming from. It's not necessarily as simple as just saying we're going to reduce sanding, since we've already done that. So it's a larger problem, and we really need to figure out, kind of do an analysis and understand what makes the most sense to address the problem that we're experiencing, not just immediately identify this as a solution, and figure out where it makes sense to install it, just in terms of where it would create the most benefit, and also where it can be fit with the extensive amount of utilities that are now in the roadway. So unfortunately, I don't think just the way the MOU was written, it can be covered with this 175, but I do think it's a priority that we could look at moving forward.
Beth, the sediment catchment, can that be as part of stormwater, or would that be out of regular capital?
So I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's usually something that would be covered under the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, but those funds are typically run through the capital planning process.
Yeah, and I understand. I'm just trying to figure out the funding source. Could we add that to the list of projects? I don't know if the engineering department or if the town manager's office can put that to be added to the next, capital projects evaluation.
Yeah, I'm happy to sponsor that, I guess, if that's the right word, through the next capital cycle. Jay and I could work together on that.
I will work on that.
Yeah, I think that we.
So that would be for June 2021 would be the next open capital cycle for us to submit that as a project.
Yeah, understood. But as you mentioned, the 175,000, it's not, we can't be reimbursed by Eversource. It's not as part of the MOU. So
right.
The next best thing is to put it in the capital list.
Yeah,
So
thanks for clearing that up.
Restoration or other design services.
Is there anything that by moving forward with the project and then dealing with the sediment drain afterwards, that we'll have to kind of dig up a project that we've already started, or are we going to be able to get to the sediment drain and kind of anything else in that area and respond to the requests of the Friends of Winter Pond later on, because we're probably going to be behind the traffic project a year or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing would just be pavement restoration. I think Eversource will probably come in with final paving sometime next year. Jay would be my guess.
That's correct. Yeah, sometime next spring.
So, depending what we would do, there'd be a small area of pavement restoration that we would have to do with putting in any sort of a BMP structure that would be used to trap the sediment there. But it's hard to know exactly where that will be installed without a design process. So I can't really comment right now where that impact would be.
Right. Thank you, Beth. It's not something you can just quickly pop in the ground. It's not an install. You have to do some analysis first. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. There's an engineering design piece to it. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Beth. I've noticed there are a few hands raised here. So right now we can elevate Ann McGovern, Sam Shepard, Jennifer Hafeli. I think those are the only ones that I see. And hi, Ann McGovern. I saw your hand raised first, so feel free to comment on the Woodside Road project.
Thank you all for recognizing me. I've lived on the shore of Winter Pond almost 50 years and have seen and been very proud to be part of Winter Pond the Friends of Winter Pond to contribute to the town's maintenance of the pond. And until I heard Susan tonight, I thought that you had overlooked the intent of the original offer from Eversource when they asked the Friends of Winter Pond what is important. And we said maintenance of the pond, which you all know is one of the town's biggest attributes. And we have lost our water supply. It's going other places for various reasons. We have contributed too much to the disintegration of the water quality. But what we obviously focus on is a need for a drain to keep the sediment from going in and causing the end of Little Winter Pond before we know it. We need these recreational places, the wildlife places. It's a wonderful thing. I count on you. I'm so glad to hear that you're interested in following up on the need for the drain. And I'll hush up, but thank you for your concern about this. Remember, as you vote, that you want to keep Winter Pond, and it's your responsibility as a town to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGovern. And we'll take Sam Shepard next.
Hi, it's Sunny and Sam Shepard. I'm Sunny, Sam's wife. And we just wanted to thank you as well for caring for the pond as we live on Woodside Road. But I just had a few questions and was wondering if you had any clarity on the Eversource project, because we actually just gave birth to our son in May, and I was pregnant through the National Grid, and our house filled up a few times with gas, and I had to go to the hospital. And now with this Eversource project, our house, it's quite disruptive. And of course, I know the work needs to be done, but we were just hoping for clarity on the timeline and if there's any other work being done, because we've asked a few times and haven't really gotten the same answer. So if you could provide us with any clarity, that would be incredible.
Thank you. I think that we have received some more information recently, and I'm sorry that you've had to deal with the impacts of the both those projects. Jay, or Lisa, I know that we've been kind of circling the Eversource project a little bit lately, and we received a memo from them recently about them winding things down. Did we have a timeline? Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we've been working with them very closely, Beth and I and staff. We are also concerned how long the project has taken. Our biggest concern is with our deadline on November 15th, when we kind of, shut things down. We are permitting them to go a little longer, but we're hoping by the end of November that Woodside Road and Wildwood would be opened and paved, temporary. They are moving along, putting the pipes in now and now doing the wiring. So our goal is by the end of November that both of those roads would be completed with the pipe and and pavement, temporary pavement. Be a lot of cleaning up, but majority of the construction of that area should be done by the end of November.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jay. So when we look at the paving, so Upper Wildwood will be repaved, and Woodside and Wildwood, that area will be repaved and reopened as well.
That's correct. Yep, that's
Okay.
our goal. And we have another meeting this Thursday to get updated. Yep.
So it should be cleaned up by the end of November, we would say.
Yep.
Okay.
They could still be on Fletcher, but that would be isolated from Fletcher at Palmer and Fletcher at Church. We're going to continue to let them do as much as they can if the weather permits, because they're really behind on this project.
Yeah. So the Fletcher, Bacon, and Maine construction there, that will continue, you would say, for several months, or?
No, as long as we have good weather. If it starts snowing and we have quite a bit of snow, then we'll probably shut it down. But we're going to let them go maybe a few weeks into November, late November and early December, depending on the weather.
Okay.
I just wanted to also mention that once this initial phase of construction is complete, which is the bulk of it, but they will have to come back towards the end of the project to pull the cables through the conduit. So there'll be some additional work. It's not open excavation, but the neighborhood will see Eversource out there towards the end of the overall project to pull the cables through the conduit as kind of the last phase of the project.
But the road will be open for traffic.
Okay. The other question that was raised, J2, is the hours of work. It looks, I've heard that they've been working, starting earlier and going from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. Do we have any restrictions on that, or any expectations that will change in working on the weekends as well?
No, so first of all, I haven't worked on any weekends that I'm aware of. Beth, are you aware of any weekend work? As far as I know, there hasn't been.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah, we also have it opened so during school hours in the morning, so they can get to school. There has been some work. It seems like it's been a little longer. If you see the intersection of Palmer and Wildwood, there's a ton of utilities there, and it's so bad that they have to use a big vacuum truck. They can't even use a backhoe to dig, and there's multiple utility lines. It's a very slow process. So they've been working a little later, but usually, I travel that road all day long, going home at night, and they're usually out of there by 4 or 5 at the latest. But they've been working a little later because of that intersection, and they're really working a little later on Woodside too, also to try to get that street open, because we've really been on them about getting those roads open.
Have we discussed with Eversource any further mitigation beyond what's in the MOU, based on the timeline that's increased and seems fairly open-ended at this point? I don't know if that's something that we can discuss with them if we're meeting.
We haven't at this time. I'm not saying we can't in the future, but because I believe this project is not going to be completed on their timeline and time frame. So, but right now, no, there hasn't been any discussion on any new MOU with them at all.
So I just want to chime in. I did have a quick conversation with our town council regarding that, and we don't have any direct authority. So it would all be sort of good faith negotiations. So I think we can open conversations about that, but I'm not sure there's anything we can do to, withhold permits unless they give us more money. Just want to be clear.
I did mention to them about a speed table on Woodside, and they know what the cost of those are. They kind of smiled at and laughed at me, but I said, it'd be in good gesture if you could do that for us during paving, but they didn't bite at it now. But I'll keep trying.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Any other comments from members of the community or members of the select board?
I just wanted to ask a quick question. I don't know if you wanted to finish with the community's comments first, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not seeing any.
Yeah, this is Jennifer Hafley. I was still waiting for my opportunity.
Okay. Apologize, I missed you there, Jennifer. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. And Mike, I got your email earlier today regarding the traffic issues. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I am fairly new to town, but I am on the board of Friends of Winter Pond, and I live on Chesterford Road East, so right on Little Winter Pond and right by where Eversource is creating havoc over the last couple of weeks. I wanted to thank you also for raising the issue of the sediment drain, but I do question why it can't be included in the MOU. I've been trying to bring myself up to speed on this, and so I've been reading a lot of the documents recently, and the MOU mentions many activities, but it also says is not limited to. and it's all about areas adjacent to Winter Pond. While the sediment drain was not on the Leonard plan, I think that things change over time, and that is very clearly a priority for Friends of Winter Pond right now. So I'm trying to understand why it can't be included with the MOU.
So Beth, I know that we had discussed this a little bit earlier, and there's some limitations on the language from the MOU, but you know, I think it's a funding and readiness question as well that we have to make decisions. And you know, I will say that we are already planning on having the sediment drain and projects around Winter Pond be addressed through the capital projects that are coming up in the next cycle. So it's already in the queue to get working. So it's not that we're just choosing not to do this. It's more of a timeline thing. So Beth, I don't know if you're still there, if you had any comments on this, or Jay, either one of you.
Sorry, I apologize. I was disconnected for a minute, so I didn't hear the resident comment. I apologize. Maybe Jay has something to add.
Yeah, I think it's a commitment that Beth and I are willing to take on. We're going to take other projects on too, I think, in the future of the ponds. I do believe that if we get it designed, we'll move forward with sediment basin there. I think it's going to be a priority. With Beth and I think we're committed to get that installed. I don't think we can, as Lisa said, that we really can't open a new MOU at this time. But I'll give you my word as DPW director, and I know Beth, that we're making this a priority. We do many projects in town, and we're ready to work with Mark Toogood and Beth and Meg White, the project team, and make this a priority.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate the clarification on it being a timing issue and not that it's just not eligible within the MOU. Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Jackie, you were going to make some comments.
Yeah, I'll just be really quick. First of all, thank you so much for everyone who's joining this call from the neighborhood. It's extremely important for us to hear from you. Thank you also for those on TTAC who are here, because your commitment to these important quality of life issues with respect to traffic are so crucial to our residents and therefore to our board. And also thank you to all of our town staff who are so directly and committed to this project. And thank you particularly to our town engineer and others on her team and Mr. Gill with respect to trying to find a way to sort of stretch the funds to kind of cover all the needs here. I just have two quick follow-ups, but I was particularly enlightened by the comments of Ms. McGovern and Ms. Hayfley. Hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. About the importance of the sediment drain, and it sounds like there's a commitment from our Department of Public Works to try to help continue the vitality of these ponds. And I believe our entire board agrees with you. I will speak for myself. I certainly do. And I think that it was very enlightening for me to hear, particularly your comments for those who are on the board of these ponds, and look out for their vitality, because I totally agree with you, Ms. McGovern, that these aspects of this project are super important, but maintaining the ponds are as well. So, but I did want to ask a quick question regarding I know the tool report indicates speed humps or tables, and I didn't, unless I missed it, see any pictures, and particularly because, as I understand it, we don't have these elsewhere in town. I just wanted to just kind of double check kind of what the status is, if we're kind of thinking about tables as opposed to the humps, and kind of how high they would be, or if they're sort of painted in a way that is supposed to make people, I've seen the plans obviously a few times, but make them particularly visible, and yet we also want to maintain the aesthetic of the pond. So I was just wondering if either our town engineer, Mr. Gill, could just comment on what's being considered as far as the speed humps and speed tables, because obviously we hope that they'll be a success, particularly because we don't as a town have direct experience with them. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, I got some clarification from Tool on this as well. I'm not a traffic engineer myself, so I didn't realize the distinction, but they do draw a distinction between what they call speed humps and what they call speed tables. So they say that they typically recommend the speed humps, which are in mid-block areas, which is what we're talking about here on Woodside Road. And they say that they're more economical to design and construct. So I think that the speed humps are the correct terminology and correct product to be used in the Woodside Road corridor. They are, as the name would imply, a hump as opposed to kind of a raised table platform kind of area, like you might see. Sometimes you see raised intersections. I guess that would be more of a speed table type design. So all getting education as we go through this design process. But yes, it's more like a large elongated speed bump, I think is.
But not
So-
like
similar to
you'd see in a parking lot though, right? I mean, it probably
No,
allows
no,
you to
no.
go
It's-
20
yeah,
miles
I mean,
an hour.
It's designed for the 20 mile per hour speed of the road. It's not, yeah, it's much wider than what you would see kind of like in a parking lot with pavement markings to denote it.
So Beth, can you tell them about the speed tables that we're gonna be put out, installed in Main Street in the next couple weeks, or maybe
Sure.
next
Yeah.
week?
Yeah. So
That would be a good one to have everyone
yeah,
look at.
and I know we're calling those speed tables, but I think as traffic engineers would call it, they're not necessarily the same product. But
Right.
through the shared streets grant, we were able to get some funding to put in these movable speed humps, speed tables. I'm not quite sure what the correct terminology is, but they're going to be located in the town center near Starbucks and near the Century Bank at those two crosswalks that exist in the town center. So those will be installed hopefully in the next, I don't know, I'm not sure. We just ordered the product last week. So as soon as we get them, we'll put them in if we can. If not, depending, if we start having snow, DPW will either put them in this fall or in the spring. But those are temporary and movable. What we're looking to install on Woodside Road is a permanent paved feature.
Beth, this is Amy. Is there any reason why we wouldn't do a temporary there to see how it goes in that corridor before we spend all of the money to put in the permanent ones?
Yeah, it's certainly something we could talk about with school during the design phase. I think the only consideration is the timing of the final pavement and how that, if we were trying to coordinate Eversource's final pavement installation with a contractor to install the speed humps, that's the only thing we need to consider. But certainly that's something we can talk about as we get into the design process.
Okay, thanks. And Mike, are you seeing the comments in the chat?
Yes, I am.
So in my view, I think we should move forward with the proposed study and design. So that will be $70,000 that we would submit for reimbursement. And then that leaves us with 105. And I guess then we'll have to make a decision once we get the design from Tool and construction estimates on what we can fund. Is that right?
That's exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the intention.
Yeah, we also on a parallel track will start evaluating the work that needs to be done on Winter Pond regarding the sediment basin, which I've really only heard about recently, and what it'll take for us to do some projects there. Hopefully we can find some resources to do some work there. But there will be some additional engineering that is required there. So was that a motion, Mariano, or?
I mean, I can make a motion if you'd like, or I'll let the vice chair do that. But that's just my comment. I think we should move forward with the study as
Yeah,
proposed.
I agree.
Can I just say before you make the motion, and I'd like to encourage everyone who's on the Winter Pond board and also in the neighborhood to continue to be engaged in this process and let us continue to hear from you, because some of the comments in the chat are very important. And as the project sort of progresses, I mean, obviously you're there on a constant basis. And so your feedback and you being direct stakeholders as well as the town, but particularly given your proximity, it's extremely important for us to continue to hear your voice. Cannot emphasize that enough. So we hope you'll continue to be engaged in the process so that the outcome is something that you'll be proud of, frankly. Thank you.
So I'll move that we direct the engineering department to engage with Tool for, as proposed, task 1, survey and wetlands delineation services for task 2, design services along Woodside Road, task 3, meetings and permitting, including expenses for $54,200, and task 4, additional alternate 1 for $37,900. The funding to be $70,000 to be reimbursed by the Eversource with the 2017 MOU, and the $22,100 from the engineering budget.
Second.
All in favor? I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and yes for me. The motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
Hey,
That
before we go,
Thank you.
Beth, hold on one second, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There was a question in the chat. It says, is a study and cost for the drain needed to go to the capital committee? So I don't know the answer to that.
So I think the first step in the process is having a study done. That's what we would need, capital funding to help us fund that study to determine exactly what we need to, what makes sense to design and install out there.
Okay.
So that would be the request. Yep.
So we will reach out to the Friends of Winter Pond, and we have already pushed this into the capital process at this point, and we'll work then. But we're not going to take any more comments from the chat at this point because we have to move forward. We have a really busy agenda. So thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth and Jay, was there anything else that you needed to be here for on our agenda?
Not for me, I don't think.
I didn't think so. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I think we can jump into the town meeting warrant articles. Unless, Lisa, was there something else that you thought we should address before we do that?
Oh, we can do that next.
And town planner Brian Sekeli is here as well. So Brian's already had a long evening of meetings. So if there are items for our discussion that relate to Brian and questions we have for him, then we can start with those.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for joining us. I have questions on Articles 5 and 6, if we can take them up now.
Sure, go right ahead.
So my understanding is, so articles, both articles reference essentially down zoning or spot zoning that area to make it so that special permit will go from 65 to 59 on Article 5, and then removing it from PUD 2 on Article 6. And both talk about abutting the neighborhood. So I went there to take a look at it. Essentially, it is severely restricting what can be done on the buildings there on Main Street, which those are buildings that we would want to be able to have mixed use, affordable housing with commercial. And I think that this would be detrimental to what the town wants to do. And as far as abutting that neighborhood, Elmwood already has a 5-story building on it, and Elmwood is right behind those buildings, right? And then it's got a 3.5-story apartment building also. So there's 2 buildings right there that are pretty massive. And then as far as Vine, I looked at the elevation. Main Street sits at 20 feet above sea level, and Vines sits at 43 feet above sea level. So as far as abutting the neighborhood, Main Street is 23 feet below Vine Street. So to reduce the height of what is allowed on Main Street by special permit from 65, that just doesn't make sense to me, especially using the idea that it abuts a neighborhood. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So I would hope that Articles 5 and 6 would be indefinitely postponed.
Brian, could you also talk a little bit about where these articles came from? We hadn't really heard too much about this being a problem, and so I'm not sure if there was something that drove the need for these changes.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to share my screen here, see if this can help out a little bit. I don't know how big this is on your screen, but just to help put things in context a little bit. So in terms of, so what we're talking about is this green area that's getting taken out of the north core and put in its own zone. In terms of where it came from, so when the zoning passed, it was anticipated that over the course of maybe 5 to 15 years, we would try to add somewhere between 225 and 250 units to downtown, with areas that are kind of pegged for larger areas for development. And the east side of Main Street has a lot more potential than the west side. If you look at the buildings that are currently there, the idea of having a 65 or more 65-story building right on the rotary probably doesn't make a ton of sense. And then what other parcels that are actually here, the building that is the one-story building, the Liquor Junction, I believe, or yep. So that is certainly the one that is probably impacted the most in the zone, simply because there's an ability to certainly put new construction there at a higher height. However, how this really came was interactions with the neighborhood over time through the development of the Center Business District over the past 5 years. So I wouldn't say it's one specific project. Certainly 654 Main Street, right on the corner here of Fells Hardware, that certainly was one of the projects that was talked about. But the idea is that the west side of the street doesn't need to be at 65 feet. 59 is a large enough building for that site along Main Street. In terms of why specifically the board, this was sentiment over the past, I would say, two years of neighborhood sentiment and what actually could fit on the site here. The idea of very large structures happening on the west side, parcels were not getting conglomerated. So the idea is that we would be able to do plan unit developments. More certainly with larger sites, but since all of the ones on the west side of Main Street, you can't really put them together. Just the way that they've been developed now between Elmwood, Fells Hardware, the Brigger's Bagels and the units behind them, the brick building that's there, there's just not a lot of movement that can happen there.
Yeah, but the problem is 59 feet. So if we subtract 23 from that, is 36 feet. So essentially we're saying the buildings on Main Street have to be lower, even by special permit, will be lower than the buildings on Vine because they already sit 23 feet higher to start with. So, I mean, it seems like we're saying, well, we haven't had any development, so let's make it harder to have development. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't. Yeah, the only thing I can say is that I don't think the reason is because we haven't had development here. It's more of that like I said, the proximity to. Whoops, sorry, my screen. If you look at the green areas, so this is the existing map. The green areas here are showing the height map of 40. So anything that's green is 40 feet. And the idea is that this is directly next to this area that's 45 and doesn't necessarily make sense simply because of this interaction between this side of the street and then the rest of the neighborhood behind. I understand what you're saying. Yours like it doesn't make sense because they're 20 feet above. I don't have anything to count.
So the 5-story building is only 40 feet tall?
I'm sorry?
The 5-story building that is at the corner of Elmwood and
oh no, I meant the height zone, meaning that you could by right anything that's in green that's new. The by right height is 40 feet. That's what it is now, and that's not changing. Yeah.
Well, okay, but that building right there, I mean, how
I know.
tall?
Yeah, it's like close to 60. I want to say 60. Yeah,
that's over 60. Yeah, so, and that's already higher than Main Street, right? Not 23 feet. That's about 6 or 7 feet higher than Main Street, and we already have an over 60-foot building there.
Yeah, there's another one also that's across the street that's also a taller building as well.
Yeah, so again, I just don't understand why we're doing this, and what's the impetus for putting something like this also on a remote town meeting? It honestly just doesn't make any sense to have these two articles at next week's town meeting.
I mean, it seems just like, we get into this habit of things that appear like spot zoning and, are responding to specific interest in properties. And so it's, to Mariano's point, it seems hard to believe that this is an urgent need, based on what the existing zoning is. I don't know.
I mean, I certainly can't speak to an actual need or related to the remote town meeting. The only thing I can say is that town council has reviewed this. This is definitely not spot zoning. It's actually correcting an inconsistency between the North Core and the town common that have right now this map that is currently on in our Winchester zoning bylaw has a inconsistency because it's a uniformity issue because everywhere in the North Core, you can see here, it's not treated the same, meaning the entire North Core is currently this whole outlined area here, but some areas are treated with 40 feet and some are treated with 45. So that was one other impetus for this, is correcting something. Obviously, we could have corrected it in many different ways. So I'm not going to say the impetus of this entire article was to correct something, but that is certainly something that's part of the article, and the town council told us that we needed to fix.
It could be corrected without negatively affecting Main Street, which is what this is doing, right? I mean, it could be that those parcels could have been put into the town common without making the west side of Main Street harder to develop, especially when there's a development there right now that we had the developer come speak to us and say that they're not sure what is going on with their special permit application, with 2 special permit applications. It doesn't seem like the right time to be doing this, and especially to be making it harder to develop on Main Street.
I understand. I just want to make very clear this does not affect the 53-foot height building at 654 Main Street, Fells Hardware. This does not affect them whatsoever. This zoning change.
I think that we heard from the developer as well, and Dennis Carlone, who's been a consultant on the project as well, had mentioned his recommendation that specifically in that location on Main Street, that he would recommend another story or, above where it is. So actually, he recommended a much taller building there. So it just seems to me that, to Mariano's point, if uniformity is a benefit to the town common and North Core, are there other ways that we can solve this problem besides, reducing the height of buildings where elevation is a factor, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I don't believe there is anyone here from the planning board. I believe I'm speaking for them in terms of the reasoning behind it. I don't know, not meaning I don't think I'm leaving anything out. I think, but in terms of why now, and this definitely seems quote like a down zone. Yeah, totally, 100%. This is making a 65-foot building not possible under any circumstance, and it's taking it from 65 to 59. The reason is to get the scale more in line with the west side of Main Street. Whether or not anyone feels that's appropriate or not, I don't believe that's really what you're asking me. But the board would be the one to defend this at town meeting, with me being the kind of like more of the mechanics of how this happened, why, and but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
And the planning board
Brian,
was still the SPGA here, right? So
that is correct. The planning board is the special permit granting authority for these zones in the town center.
Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, no, I had a slightly separate question. The area to the very north there, that where Stop and Shop is now, is that being affected? Is it added or taken out of any zone?
No. So yeah, so the current North Core is, I'm doing the outline of the current North Core here, is this
Right.
whole area here.
Yep.
And then now the North Core is just the red.
Okay.
So this is the same. It's just this part of the North Core is being taken out and is going to be its own core, the West Core. And these parcels that are acting like the town common because they have the same height are being brought into the town common.
Okay. So while I really think we should have some deference for the decisions of the planning board, I also think we should have some deference for the decisions that the planning board made years ago in trying to allocate areas and encourage development. And this just seems like making something that's already complex more complex. Although you could argue the other way, because this way you have Main Street be more of a border. But again, I'm not convinced, and I guess it is up to the planning board, and maybe a little unfair to be putting you on the spot as the person who's answering questions. It just seems to be more complexity than is really conducive to development here. Thank you.
I just have a couple quick questions. I did raise my hand, so if it's okay to speak at this point, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I'll just be very brief. First of all, Mr. Sekeli, thank you so much for taking your time to join our meeting. Really appreciate your comments. I think your presentation has been extremely helpful for our board and also very concise. I would just note, as a former chair of the planning board, this suggestion that's indicated in this warrant article has been something that the planning board, in my experience, has discussed for quite a long time. This is not something new. I'd also note, just as an observation, as everyone on this board is aware, as far as the comment about that seemed to be suggesting that this would quell development. I mean, some of the most recent development has been in this area. So you could almost argue that, you know, begs the question, is there much more to develop in this particular area that Mr. Sekeli has identified? As we all know, Ruger's Bagel, you know, converted the top part to condominiums. There's also the Elmwood project that's, I think, complete. And then as far as the project where we had the developer come to our meeting last week and his team and described the project, despite the fact that a couple people on our board suggested that he might want to consider making it taller. And I would note there's no unanimity on this board for him to do that. That developer seemed to have spent a lot of time on his plan and seemed to like his current plan and wasn't seeking to add another story. So I guess I sort of am kind of confused by the comments by some of our good select board members tonight suggesting that this warrant article would quell development, when in fact there has been development, and the development has been consistent. And in fact, the recent project, or the project that's sort of pending, I guess you could say, is in keeping with the scale. I think our town planner has provided a very concise description about how this buffers on a neighborhood, and despite the elevation height, it doesn't take away the fact that this is a neighborhood, and the buildings that are taller are very old. I don't know the exact year of them, but particularly that one tall brick building that's right next to the Congregational Church. That's probably not pre-zoning, but it's certainly pre-modern zoning. So, or at least, I believe that's pre-World War II. But in any event, I just wanted to thank the town planner for coming in tonight and providing these helpful comments. Thank you.
Brian, what's the front setback on North Core?
It's 0 to 5 feet. These buildings are meant to be up to the sidewalk, essentially, to have more of a well, yeah, 0 to 5 feet. So virtually nothing. None of the setbacks or anything. The only thing that's changing is the special permit height. The by right height is not changing.
Yeah, no, the only reason I ask is because the way it's drawn, it's not down the middle of the street. And so I don't know if there would be any concern with like what land court decided on the CVS site.
No. So right. So this was just me drawing pictures, and the actual map are done by engineering, and even it's still kind of odd about that situation, because obviously we know certainly from that zoning can't be in the street. So even if there was a line going down the middle of the street, it was still very odd that the judge said that you can do that, because zoning doesn't go into the street. But either way, our zoning maps have all been corrected so that can never happen again. So,
Yeah, I mean, my only comment, I think, I'm far less educated on all of this than many of you are. Just to Jackie's point that, this area seems to be pretty much developed at this point, and we know that there's one more development coming in that's really critical for this area. I don't understand why at this point this is necessary. It seems to me that again, this area is, I understand the continuity of the 40 feet. That makes sense to me. I just think that the special permit change is an add-on that doesn't seem necessary to me. So I agree with Mariano and his assessment.
Other comments or questions that I think Susan, Jackie, your hands were up from before, but feel free to jump in.
Sorry, I just didn't take mine down.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize as well.
No worries. Any other comments or questions on those two articles? Okay. Are there other questions on other articles? Well, Brian is here.
Brian, on Article 9, does having the DAC, will the DAC have to, would it be separate meetings, or would they be able to review without having to have an additional meeting? How do you envision that happening?
Yeah, so I think the way we had envisioned it, and it's really kind of left up to the Disability Access Commission, but the way we really left it was that we didn't really anticipate that the DAC would be reviewing bump outs and, you know, additions on single family and two family homes. Although I guess they have the right to do that. We just didn't think that that was bandwidth that they wanted, nor did they necessarily care about, like I said, someone doing a bump out or some type of an addition on their home. What we do definitely want their opinion on is certainly any multifamily projects, large scale projects, large scale commercial projects where the public is involved, or a lot of people. There just really should be their voice in those project reviews, and they just haven't been there. So that's what we anticipated.
Thank you.
I actually still have my hands up. I put my hand back up, Mr. Chair. So I just have a question about another article from Mr. Sekeli whenever it's my turn.
You can just jump in whenever, Jackie. It's you know, anybody that just wants this, just because I've
Robert's rules.
got a lot of screens going. I'm trying to read the articles, and so I may miss you if the hand goes.
Yeah, no
back.
problem. I'll be quick. Thank you.
don't have to
Yeah, okay, thank you. Now I'll lower my hand. So Mr. Sekeli, I just wanted to ask you a quick question about Article 4. And I don't know if you're prepared to necessarily talk about this. I just have kind of a quick question. If you could, I have it in front of me, but just so I'm not kind of catching you unawares, are you able to access that? You don't have to put it on share screen. I just have a quick question for you.
I do, go right ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. So with respect to this, I believe that the purpose was identified related to so folks can use an accessory building as a home office or something along those lines. At least that's what it was represented to us, I believe. But I'm just kind of curious. I know that the terminology for paragraph 4 would be replaced, but by taking out no home occupation shall be conducted in any accessory building, I sort of reference back to paragraph 1, and it says no person other than members of the family residing on the premises will be engaged in such occupation. So I'm just kind of curious if it was envisioned that someone in a family could actually kind of, sort of sleep or reside in the accessory building. Like, I'm just kind of wondering if it, and I'm not questioning because I think you did have town council review this, but I do know this area of law can be kind of complicated. I just know that from my own experience in land use. So with respect to number 4, I was just kind of curious if there was consideration given, and I'm not suggesting that it has to be, I'm just kind of curious, to have both the new proposed language in paragraph 4, there shall be no sales or products on the premises in connection with such home occupation, but also leaving in the old language of 4, no home occupation shall be conducted in any accessory building. So, I mean, it seems like the interpretation is that home occupation is simply being defined as including like working. But I mean, under this, it seems to me that under this, it could be interpreted, if this is allowed, that you can, if you will, kind of do any other kind of home occupation in an accessory building, including sleeping. And I thought that was something that wasn't intended. I appreciate the good purpose. I'm just wondering if this is drafted as tightly as it could be, and no intended to anybody. Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, so the whole point of this article is to take out number 4. So if we would leave it in, then, or in any way, then the article would, there would be no point in the article.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's assuming that home occupation includes working, but home occupation also includes other things.
I don't. So when that was my next question, is when you said that, well, it could include sleeping, or like a dwelling. So accessory dwelling units are not allowed right now. No one would be able to sleep in this accessory building and legally be a dwelling unit. They would not be able to like have an address there or anything like that. We do not allow accessory dwelling units unless it is you cannot have a kitchen facility of any kind, and it's generally for, in the bylaws, for domestic workers. So yeah, that is not something that has changed with this change. So the only people that can work in this accessory structure have to live in the main house. That's what the number 1 is. So you can't. they have to live on the premises. And since we don't allow accessory dwelling units, they have to live in the main house. They can't live in above the garage, for example. If they do, that's not allowed. But that's not changing. I don't know if you had other questions or
Yeah,
if
anyway,
yeah.
I don't want to belabor it, but in my view, this isn't, and it's no offense to you or anyone else, but I'm not sure this is I think that there's some consequences the way this is drafted, but I don't want to belabor the time with our meeting, and I can discuss it more with you offline, just to kind of finish this up. But I mean, I would just sort of note, by removing no home occupancy shall be conducted, like the term home occupation, that includes both working and living, correct?
No.
So you think it's literally only working?
That's what 3.2.1 talks about. Is it's not just occupying a home, it's your occupation. It is not having to do with occupying a home. It has to do with working. So that's
Only
what
working.
yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you very much. I'll kind of look at some of the other, like in context, but I really very much appreciate your dialogue on this tonight. Thank you.
Great, sounds good. We can talk later.
Yeah, sounds good.
It is confusing when the word, occupation and occupying, I mean, are, serving different purposes in the same, article. But I think that it's been understood by the planning board to, be read that, we, as you said, while we probably will be addressing accessory dwelling units sometime in the future, it's still not permitted by our zoning.
I think home occupation in this specific case is defined on the table of uses, right? In accessory uses, it has home occupation capitalized. So I think that's what this modifies. So that was my read of it, and I'm in favor of Article 4.
Yeah, I'm with Mariano. The different senses of the same word, occupy and occupation, but this is more like working as opposed to physically being in a space. And there is a definition separate from the part that's being the part that's being amended. So that was my understanding of it, and I think this works.
Yeah, what's weird to me is that the table of uses allows for one employee there, but the 3.2.11 says no. So I'm not sure why those two are in opposition, but
that is a question.
Might be something to fix in the future.
Yeah, I got nothing for you on that one.
Any other questions on any of the articles that involve the planning board or the town planner?
Can I just say to Brian that thank you for doing this and answering questions. And when you sent out the motion language, that was helpful to have in advance. So that could be, if that could be more of a practice, I think that would be really helpful and maybe save you some time. So thanks.
Sure.
Were there any questions on articles 12 or 13? Brian, are there any other articles that you felt the need to weigh in on or to clarify any of the objectives for?
No, I don't think so. 12 and 13, I think those are ones that I think everyone kind of has a handle on in terms of the select board, manager's office, planning department, planning board, all of that. So I totally understand the need for kind of streamlining town meeting as much as possible. That's why we tried to put as many as we could on the consent agenda, but I do understand some of the board members' concerns.
Sure. Anything else for Brian before we let him go? I think he's been in several meetings already tonight, so he's a popular guy. And one other clarification just on Articles 12 and 13. Those are select board articles that we're moving forward, Washington and Swanton Street and the Waterfield lot. Both those projects will involve our request for authority, and then final approval will return to a subsequent town meeting, ideally spring of 21. But that's not necessarily required, although with those projects it makes sense to do that. So I think that there was some questions about the authority that we were requesting, and we've kind of clarified that we'll be moving forward with the authority to negotiate, and then the final projects will come back before town meeting if you get questions from residents about that.
Yep, and just before I leave, I'll just plug the precinct meeting for town meeting members that we have on Wednesday, the 28th at 7 p.m. Check the winchester.us calendar in order to come and ask questions and discuss Articles 12 and 13. So hope to see you there.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, town planner.
So Lisa, did we need to move forward on votes on any of these on favorable action, or can we wait till a subsequent meeting?
I mean, you can certainly wait till a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Lisa or anyone on the warrant and preliminary motions? Okay.
I mean, the only thing that I would say is that we only have one meeting between now and town meeting, right? So.
Yep. I mean, happy to move forward with votes on these. It seems like everyone is mostly in agreement. If there are, we can take a motion to approve a block of them if there are other ones that we need more information on and want to get to later. So it's what we've done in the past.
So maybe should we, all right, so I would, on Article 4, I move that we recommend favorable action. I think that's ours anyway.
So that
Right?
is, yeah,
Okay.
that's ours kind of
We don't
by
do that?
default. Oh wait, sorry, did you say 4 or 3?
I said 4.
Oh, sorry.
I just turned the page. I realized that's ours. So I'll withdraw that. So on Article 5, I move that we recommend unfavorable action on Article 5.
Second.
All in favor will take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie?
No.
No. And yes, for me, the motion carries 4-1.
And then I move that we recommend unfavorable action on Article 6.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie?
No.
And yes, for me, motion carries 4-1.
I move that we recommend favorable action on Article 7.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Sorry, yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
And yes, for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0.
And then I move that we recommend favorable action on Article 8.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
And yes, for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0.
I move that we recommend favorable action on Article 9.
Second. It's in the consent agenda, right?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
those
it?
are in the consent. Yep. 9 and 10 are.
All right. So we'll We don't need to do a separate
We
motion on
can
those, or should I do both of them?
We can
Yep.
just do a motion for the consent agenda.
Okay. So I move that we recommend favorable action on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie?
I just want to pull up the consent agenda because I was looking at other things. Is it only these two articles?
I
Is it
think
only
it's
these?
I think it's the committee reports as well.
Okay. And that's
Also
it?
Article 16, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, and 28.
If
Thank
you
you
look
for
in
that
the,
clarification.
You
the
just
motion
explain
book,
why they're the consent agenda. I just don't understand.
which
What's
one?
that?
Can you just explain why those are the part of the consent agenda? What is the definition of that? I mean, I know for our meetings, but.
Those are the ones that the moderator estimates will not be like controversial.
Okay.
And they can
They're
be
standard.
moved out of the consent
Yeah.
agenda. I think it takes, what, 5 members of town meeting to move them out of the consent agenda and have them discussed and voted separately.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
think-
ready to vote. Yep. Yes.
Because of the remote nature, I think that the moderator has been trying to get as much into the consent part of it where, really slow us down voting remotely on them. So these are the kind of standard things that we go through the motions with, and he usually takes a voice vote on them anyway. So
Lexington has been doing it for years, even in-person town meetings, and sometimes they finish their town meeting in one night.
Mm,
we can
that
dare
sounds
to agree.
Oh,
Thanks, too.
Okay, so there was a motion on the consent agenda. Did we already, was there any other questions? Anyone? And it was seconded. So all in favor, Mariano,
yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie?
I believe, okay, so the ones, okay, yes. I was just trying to clarify which ones and I was looking at the wrong thing. Okay, yes, thank you.
And yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0. And, between now and then, which is why it benefits us to kind of vote on these now, if you want to reconsider a vote that you've made before town meeting, we can also put that on the agenda. If you read through something and say, I thought that was something else, then, we can certainly do that.
Mariano, can you just really quickly rattle off those numbers again?
Yeah, Articles 1, 2, 9, 10, 16, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, and 28. And
Amy,
just FYI, I don't remember, I'm not memorized, I don't have it memorized. It's on the,
Yeah.
if you look at the book that Mark sent today,
Mhm.
on the second page, there's a column for consent agenda and it has an X on the articles that are consent agenda.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? We can move on. Does everybody have the motion book that was circulated earlier today? Okay.
Do we have a total of how much we're appropriating from free cash or we're proposing from free cash, Lisa?
I don't have an exact figure for you right now.
I'm sure FinCom will have a comment about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's still a couple items that we've been discussing with FinCom that are kind of up in the air. So one of our kind of emergent issues is the workers' comp that came in a lot higher than typically would, and so we've got a couple of holes to fill over the next week or so. So any other questions? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that some things were getting moved around because of the additional state aid. So there was sort of various scenarios about what to include in terms of offsetting state aid, and then the rest reducing the tax levy, and then which to appropriate to free cash. So I know that's a moving target. That's why I don't have an exact amount.
Other questions on the warrant? Okay. Lisa, was there anything in particular you wanted to move on to next?
I can share. We're ready to move on to the racial justice project, but are you talking specifically about the warrant articles, or are you talking about other business agenda items?
Either one. I mean, I think that are we okay with the warrant articles now?
I mean, certainly we can wait on the personnel board report. The personnel board is meeting on Wednesday, so it doesn't make sense for the board to consider anything before the personnel board has. I mean, certainly it's up to you if you want to move forward with any of the capital planning items now, or that can also wait, so we can discuss capital planning and personnel at a future meeting.
Yeah, maybe we should do that just to keep moving.
Okay, great.
So we'll then go on to the anti-racism project.
Yeah. So
meeting, sorry, Lisa. Is everyone, has it been decided who's presenting for town meeting? I assume.
Yeah, so I think we had circulated a list earlier. I can try to find it. I don't have it in front of me.
That's okay.
We recirculate that tomorrow. I mean, I think that presentations are going to be limited to recordings.
Right.
So yeah, Lisa, I don't know if you had that handy. I've got to kind of dig it up because I think we made some changes, but maybe we can just circulate that for tomorrow.
yeah, that's fine. Let's do that.
Also, just FYI, I gave up my spot, Article 16. I recommended that we put it in the consent agenda because I don't think $55,000 for traffic improvements will be controversial. So, and to try to speed up the meeting, I didn't think people wanted to see a video of me talking for 5 minutes.
Yeah. We appreciate you taking one for the team. The and that was kind of a late addition. It was one that we had in the past, and hopefully it can be approved and fill some of these gaps that we have in traffic improvement projects. Because as we saw tonight, I mean, there's just not enough money. And when we look around at some of the numbers that we're getting back on these projects, I mean, it's a lot. Lisa, did you want us to start on the anti-racism project?
Yeah, so I've got 3 different documents to share, so bear with me. But first, want to bring you back to this this list. I don't know if you remember a few meetings ago, we sort of threw a lot of different ideas about what could be part of a racial justice project, and sort of in the light blue areas are the ones that kind of came out of our discussion. And then my task was kind of to take that and to, find a way to move that forward as a first step. So I'm just sort of pulling this up just to jog your memory. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into for the memo. That was sent to the board. Oh, where did that go? Mike, I don't know if you want to say a few words about that, the memo, just an introduction to the scope of services that I'm going to review right now.
Sure. As everyone knows, we had created this static agenda item under equity and anti-racism as a task force, so we can start addressing some of our policy initiatives. We felt the need to engage a little bit more substantially in assessing kind of where we are in the community, where we are in town hall and other areas. So this is an effort to do that. So it's helpful for us to make statements, but also kind of addressing concerns as they exist in Winchester. So we had reached out to a couple folks, and we received some responses, and we have Jason Lee, who is a resident here, does anti-racism work, and had actually applied to be on the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee when we realized that he also professionally does the thing that we need exactly. So after reviewing some other opportunities, Jason kind of put forward this proposal for us, and we're looking to really engage community stakeholders in a conversation about these racial issues, and really pursue anti-racism as a community. I don't know, Susan, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad Lisa put up the initial list of ideas, because one of the things that I thought is important, and that this sort of small scale project will start to do, is this number 8, just to understand the terminology and the concepts and develop some shared language, and understand that even though Winchester in and of itself is a set of dynamics, we're also within a larger context within the greater Boston area, and to understand how history has sort of landed us in a certain place, in a certain posture, if you will, and to understand that some of the things that we just take as normal are not fair, are not really equitable across different groups. So we thought that it sounded really promising to me to start with what Jason wants to do, which is kind of smaller conversations, interviews, and then develop sort of a survey, so that we can all begin to understand each other and our own town, look at our own town with some fresh eyes before we embark on anything bigger. So that's what this proposal for Jason's firm to do is about. That's what the goal is, to get a start.
Great. So tasked with determining an appropriate scope that would set a good foundation for ongoing work. Also trying to sort of have a complete set of an initial phase that also fit within a smaller budget than something that would be much more comprehensive. And then us looking for funding for future phases, but having a project that at least has some sense of both launching something, but also completion, so we don't feel like we're stopping midstream, and also trying to sort of set that initial vision, the core values, and trying to articulate the joint statement that was made into some initial action steps that are coming from stakeholders and that have some consensus and some reasonability of actually implementing. I mean, so those are kind of all the considerations going into this particular proposal, which is still in draft form. And I also must note that ultimately we will be putting this scope into the town's standard contract. So that's not what you're seeing here. You're seeing here kind of like the proposal. So if the board, once we go through the goals and the project that's part of this scope and any changes that you want to make, and if you want to move forward fairly quickly, I would need an authorization to move forward with the scope, to sort of put that into a contract. And then if you want, you can allow me to execute the contract, so giving me authority to do that. And the second, of course, would be the funding component, which is just under $10,000 for this initial phase. So those are the logistics surrounding what I'm about to show you. So in various discussions that we've had, it made sense to look at the town itself as an institution, given that we are always implementing policies, plans, rules, regulations. We are expending public resources, and there's a sense of both real gravity, but also symbolism in terms of the town going through this process itself and being a core and an anchor to work that is done community-wide. It, I think in some ways, grounds it away from maybe some of the, larger political rhetoric that we're hearing that is not necessarily rooted in real policy and real changes that have an impact here locally. So in some ways, it's to really root things locally. So this part here, the assessing the current state of town governance from a racial justice and equity perspective is taken from our last conversation. So really looking at the town to see where opportunities may exist to redesign aspects of town government based on the values that we've stated, such as, again, structure, governance, laws, regulations, zoning, hiring, promotion, policies, behaviors, and more. So as you can see, there's a lot that can come from just us as a town entity. So in terms of the process and timeline, there's going to be a number of different stages. It's sort of broken out into weeks. I don't know if it's going to be exactly that, but it's essentially the process is to gather an initial group of stakeholders. So that would be one of the more immediate steps, and it would be, this is not exact, but it would be some set of elected appointed officials. The consultant recommended that if we have more than 3 or 4 people, to break it up into 2 meetings. So it's not necessarily divided between elected and appointed. It's more like the small group conversations are much more meaningful in terms of, drawing out, basically drawing out people's thoughts and having them have the time they need to be able to have meaningful input. So the select board and the school committee or their designee makes sense, considering that the 2 were major authors of the joint statement. My office, the police chief, the human resources director, the town clerk, and/or our designees being able to convene these conversations and be able to establish the concerns, the questions, the kind of information, the documents. So basically setting that baseline of information. So we're kind of the keeper of a lot of the plans, policies, history, records, ideas, and so on. So that would be that initial first step. The second step would be the debrief and analysis of these leadership conversations. So it's just something that all of the folks that we talked about are involved in ancillarily. Sometimes it might not be kind of we don't coordinate everything we do with everyone, so it's the ability to kind of take all of this important work that we do and actually analyze it and organize it in a way with a anti-racism lens or racial justice lens, where normally we might say, like, we're just doing this because it's good governance, or we're doing this because it's part of a rule or regulation, or we have a position we need to fill, or the sort of the normal course of business. The idea is to really understand how we want to connect to those core values that might not initially seem like they're part of governance, but they certainly are. And then there's sort of the transition into this larger convening. So the consultant will then really dive into a lot of the stuff that we pull together. So again, the protocols, the processes, just the general governance, the internal culture, and his path and his priorities will really come from those stakeholder interviews and all the documents that we provide. Again, this it's a lot of work that there's no one person, elected or appointed that's really tasked to do this. So this is, I think, a very good initial step to do this thorough analysis. And then based on all of these conversations and research, the idea is that at the end of the first month, we would have a robust survey that is developed, that we would have identified 2 or 3 dozen people. So it could be other department heads, other boards, committees, other stakeholders in a town, to then be able to gather their concerns and perspectives, and maybe even widen the project beyond just the things that came out of the initial meetings. And then the last part of that is going to be just, again, debriefing and analyzing that survey. It'll show us key areas of town government that could be enhanced by bringing an anti-racist lens. Could be thinking about potential barriers and concerns. Those barriers and concerns could be just the way we've done things all of these years. It could be a real rule or regulation. It could be a financial issue. It could be a whole bunch of different barriers that are preventing us from enacting our core values and on all that we do. And then it's to sort of collect and organize the ideas. So, a lot of that might be the low-hanging fruit, or it sets the stage for sort of longer term, more complex projects, programs, policies, and so on. So deliverables would be sort of that debriefing of the initial leadership and the materials. It would be the survey and also the debriefing and analysis of that, and then a compilation of a report that takes all of those things into consideration and then provides recommendations for next steps. And that those recommendations for next steps are certainly helpful to provide what those next phases will be, where we can look for funding, who else we need to pull in terms of community groups and convenings. So that's, I'm hoping I'm capturing that in a nutshell. Again, this project is just under $10,000, and if we need any follow-up work, it's $200 an hour. So that's sort of the proposal here, and all of this will be, once it's finalized by you, will be then put into our contract and have all the various contract terms that we require. So any questions, anything I can review more in depth?
Lisa, I saw that the school committee member would be part of the interview process, but is there any other integration of the school committee or the school department in this overall initiative? Or is it just, or are they parallel pathing with something else?
So they would be involved in step 1 through 5. So they would either designate a member or their designee same thing with the superintendent, to be part of that initial core group to do those few hour interviews. In terms of the survey, and we would definitely reach out to the school committee as well. It could be parent groups, it could be students. And there might also be a parallel way that we can integrate, student and youth input into this. Like I know we have a lot of youth involvement and input into other committees in town. So my guess is that we would definitely want their voice both in sort of the stakeholder piece, the research piece. We can reach out to the schools as well and see what kinds of um, reports or history or other materials they can provide us. So Jason can get a good understanding of actually what's happening across town, and that includes the school. So it's, what's the police department doing? What's the school department doing? What's the town manager's office doing? And so on. What are we doing from a human resources standpoint? What our boards and committees look like? So the whole idea about the town is that it's as comprehensive as possible. Like we have 50 boards and committees at least. So, and we're only looking for 2 or 3 dozen surveys, but perhaps a future stage could be, how do we involve all of these kinds of entities? So I think one of my tasks moving forward is when we sort of get to who's the 24 to 30 people, I'll probably have to like scour the list of the 50 boards and committees and make sure that we have adequate and diverse representation across those committees as well. We do want to make sure that we have not only different stakeholders, whether it be age groups or the groups they represent, but we also want to have different viewpoints represented. I think we need to be very careful to make sure that it's not all like-minded people who are participating.
Thank you, Lisa. I mean, this is very important. But I know it's also a lot of work with everything else that's going on right now. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. This has been a ton of work. I mean, it's hard to just think, kind of truncate a bunch of stuff that's going on in the world and kind of, connected to the community. So this is Jason and Lisa have been doing a ton of work on this already. So thank you.
So are we ready for a motion?
Sure, unless there are other questions or comments. And, I just wanted to, mention as well, when we put out the anti-racism and police brutality statement, as well as hung the flags in the town center, I think that we made it clear that we wanted to have that be a beginning of a conversation with the community. And so this is our commitment to doing that. So it's a step in the right direction, although it's going to be a long journey for us. So we appreciate the support from the town manager's office and from the community in advance. So sorry to cut you off, Susan.
Oh, no problem. So I'm not sure I'll encapsulate this all properly, so bear with me, but I move that we authorize the town manager to move forward with the proposal for consulting services from FMRA in identifying racial and diversity justice issues and identifying opportunities for improvements.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
And yes for me. The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, everyone, again.
We do need another motion for the funding if you want to do that.
Oh, I didn't mention the funding. So I move that we authorize the town manager to allocate up Was it $10,000? I don't remember the exact number.
9985 from the hospital
Nine-
account.
Okay, 9985, in connection with this contract.
From
Second,
the hospital gift
From the
account. Yeah.
Oh,
We'll need-
from the
sorry,
gift-
we'll need
from the
to-
hospital gift account, thank you.
second,
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie. Sorry, I missed you there, Jackie. I just wanted to.
Are you muted?
yes.
Oh, there you go.
No, I said it and then I muted quickly, but yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, for me, the motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Great.
So next, do we want to take up the consent agenda as well? Is there a supplement there? Oh yeah, there was. So there is a supplemental item on the consent agenda that we just found out about, that regarding the Brownie Troop 82793. I don't know if there's any questions on that. It's the fire chief wanted our approval before he agreed to it, but it's a badge that this troop is pursuing. So we can have those two items under the consent agenda under J.
What about the employee reimbursement for COVID-19?
Yeah, we'll take that up right after the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, do I have to, go ahead.
I had a question on the consent agenda, sorry.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the parking, so permission to park in curb lane on Foxcroft Road and Oxford Street, what does that, what are we granting, what's the curb lane? What are we granting permission? Is it just to park on the street?
So they're filming.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just the park. It sounds like they're filming exterior shots. So it's going to be. I'm just seeing if I can find more information. I know I have a couple emails.
Are they going to have a police detail? Because they say they're going to need to cut off the street at certain points for traffic. Or are they going to do it themselves? I don't know if they're allowed to do it themselves.
Those are good questions.
Mm-hmm.
We can make it subject to
police approval.
So they sorry, I had to pull up the email thread, which Sergeant Batchelor and Chief McDonald are on a bunch of them. So if I can just so 2 days of filming in a suburban home and suburban neighborhood. We have 2 scenes we would like to film on Oxford Street in Winchester. The first day consists of night exterior filming on Thursday, November 5th from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Oxford Street between Foxcroft and Calumet. The scene consists of actors on their way to a party and walking down a street decorated for Christmas. The second part involves that the same street with the residents being attacked by android robots. The action will be portrayed in different vignettes. They're working with individual residents for permission to decorate their homes. Positive response from many residents, the initial canvas.
We heard from any residents opposed to it. I mean, there's going to be generators on the street until 2 a.m., right?
Yeah.
So we heard from anybody.
I have not personally, so I haven't seen anything, but it looks like they'll have a lighting effect. So just like things you're talking about, they'll look like an electrical grid blinking in and out. Dialogue.
So as far as the park and curb lane, I assume it just means to park cars on the street, which it's they're allowed to park there. There's no time limitation there. But as long as they're not like trying to like park on like the sidewalk, or I don't know where they're trying to park. But if they're just parking on the street, then I'm okay with it.
My understanding is that they are just looking to park on the street. I know Sergeant Batchelor has looked in that area with them, and they and I think they've also been doing some smaller shooting over there already without their major gear. So I think that the neighborhood is a little bit familiar with them too.
So as long as the chief of police is okay, and or they do it, detail or whatever they need to, I'm okay with it.
So my understanding is that the location manager is going to be in contact with Sergeant Batchelor to discuss setting up details for security and traffic in that section.
So I move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the filming on Oxford Street and the fire safety activity with the Brownie Troop.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
and yes for me. Motion carries unanimously, 5-0.
And then on the reimbursement for the COVID testing.
Yeah, so I know there's been a lot of conversations, and I just sent over a brief memo. This kind of came up late last week and over the weekend throughout other communities, but Winchester as well, of one of the best ways to kind of stop the spread is also to break down those barriers to testing for employees who are at risk by being at work. And this was something that was brought up at the Board of Health meeting tonight as well. It may be that every person is completely covered, but we've had employees that have had to return for testing multiple times because there's been a risk of exposure, and we don't want any sort of financial impediment to get in the way of them testing. It may be that there's nobody that applies for reimbursement here, but I think a couple questions that we've had about the additional costs for it. The only thing that I didn't put in the memo that Jen Murphy had asked was to limit reimbursements for tests to the PCR test. The rapid tests are, frankly, not terribly worth it for us because they have so many false negatives. So something to consider. I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments.
I think it's a good idea. I was going to say, I think that's a good idea. One of my children is in the works in a community sort of health clinic and gets tested like almost every week. And if she had to pay for all of those, it would be crazy. So if you are, if you are unlucky enough to be in a location where you are contacted, or you come in contact with someone who tests positive, and you then have to test yourself, get tested multiple times, I could see how it would run into a financial issue if your insurance didn't cover all of them. So I see the need for this.
So we're just talking about teachers?
No, municipal employees.
Municipal employees. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and there are, and I know that Jen Murphy has been working extensively on getting other testing locations, state testing locations closer to us. The one that is designated as a free site is in Everett, and a lot of our employees don't live right around Winchester, and they work further north, and so when people are shuffling around with different needs to have to go somewhere, especially into a hot zone to get a test. It's a barrier. It's something that, you know, crosses someone's mind, and maybe they say, oh, maybe I can wait another day, or maybe I don't need this. And then, you know, there's more exposure there. So I think, Lisa, we envisioned this to be going through departments. I mean, I don't know what kind of volume there would be, but imagine that the schools will take care of their own, but want to make it available to everyone. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm not at all opposed to this. There's a lot of, Everett's not the only one. The Stop the Spread sites there's one in Saugus too. I mean, there's a number across the state. I'm not opposed to this. I think that we should absolutely take advantage of, or help our staff take advantage of testing if they feel like it's necessary. But there are options out there too, besides Everett.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I only identified Everett as the closest one to Winchester, but, you know, it's still, if you're working in Winchester and you're coming from somewhere else. But I think there's been, you know, we've noticed there's been a real deficit with something really close to this area that is necessary for residents of this area. So it may be that there's no financial concern and everyone's okay, but we've, you know, we've heard quite a few questions from people, you know, and when you look at, you know, we get those notices from the school about positive tests, you know, at high school or Morocco or BO or any of our schools. And, you know, that means that's teachers that are exposed as well. And we've had positive with teachers, and that means they've got to go home and have their family be tested as well, right? So it's it's a major impact, and we don't want to put any barriers in the way of that.
Yeah, I totally support this as well. And also we want to encourage, not discourage, you know, testing to the extent people think it's necessary for them to do that. So I'm completely in favor of this, and I praise those who had the initiative to bring this to our attention.
Thanks, Jackie. We had actually approved, I think maybe $13,000 or so for the Board of Health to do for some tents and other things for the flu shots, and that didn't end up being necessary. So the Board of Health didn't access that. So just from a financial perspective, you know, we didn't have that deficit that as well. So I would think that this would come from the hospital gift account. Happy to hear other comments or questions.
So I move, if I'm not muted, okay, I move that we authorize the town manager to use up to $10,000 from the hospital gift account to reimburse municipal employees for the cost of COVID-19 tests that are not covered by their insurance.
Second.
And just to, as a friendly amendment there, to identify the PCR as the testing requirement if it's for tests. So just to put that in there. All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano.
Can I just ask you a quick question about the friendly amendment? I'm no scientist, but having had 4 tests just so I can meet with clients, I know that there are differences. And so, but sometimes a facility gives one instead of the other. I think there's a little bit of a difference on kind of reliability, but so, and I'm not against your amendment. I'm just kind of curious if it'll be easier for the employees not to have that amendment, or if you think it's critical to have it. Because sometimes you go to a place and you don't even know which one they do. I'm just kind of curious if that would.
Yeah, I think that this, just because of the efficacy of the testing, this was requested by Jen Murphy from the Board of Health.
Okay, I didn't realize she was requesting that. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
So that's what seemed
good enough.
Yeah.
She's the expert. Thank you.
Thanks. Where were we? Did we already take a
We're
vote?
voting.
Was who did I get? Mariano, did I get you already?
And I vote yes.
Yes. Susan?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And yes for me. The motion carries unanimously 5-0. The only other item that we had skipped over was the budget outlook. That was kind of a item that's been on there for a little while. I know, Lisa, you reached out to departments to start the budget process for the next cycle. So we'll probably be hitting that after town meeting at some point.
Yeah,
maybe
actually,
late December, you know?
if I could just jump in on that. So I have heard from several department heads that they are going to need more time. I was hoping to get everything done before Thanksgiving, but as you can imagine, everyone is.
No.
up.
Yeah. I think everybody is just wiped out, and we've been meeting every week for like 6 months. So yeah, we're probably not going to take that up until December, and
Yeah.
After town meeting, take a little bit of a break.
Okay.
So thank you. No, I appreciate the staff responding to that. Any other items? Anything else that we missed here?
I wanted to just ask if we're going to have another like regular meeting in November, say after town meeting is over, or we just don't know yet.
Again, if
Well, because we kind of moved on, and I forgot again. But I wanted to come back and circle back with the land acknowledgement in November, because it's Native American Heritage Month. I think the first one I sprang on you was maybe a little long, maybe a little too complicated. I've gotten some emails from folks and in support of the idea and kind of making suggestions. So I'd like to come back and talk about that again.
What you said before was so educational. I thought it was just really enlightening. I really appreciated it. Not that you asked this, but is that something you might be considering at town meeting also?
That's what a couple of people have asked me, and it seems like a logical thing to do, a next step. Believe it or not, the town website has a lot of information about, it's not necessarily easy to find, but a lot of information about the local history with the Squaw, Sockham, and the colonists, and I find it kind of fascinating too. So yeah, it kind of would make sense for the whole town to do.
Yeah, or maybe even just refer to the website for people to get more. We don't want to compete with poetry or anything, of course. So
that's true. We don't want to lose the poetry.
So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and we can certainly check with Peter on that as well. I know that in the past, even non-COVID times, he's hasn't been terribly excited about those things. I know that we wanted to also read the human rights statement when at the meeting, and it somehow kept getting left off there. So I think that we can do that, and maybe it's something that can be recorded as well. Time-wise for town meeting, I don't know.
Well, we don't necessarily have to do that this year. I mean, there's future town meetings.
Yeah, well, I mean, the sooner the better. We can do it multiple times, and yeah, I'm sorry if we kind of neglected to put that on the agenda.
No, I forgot again. But I was kind of aiming at November, and I didn't realize how little of November there really was once you get through town meeting.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to put a meeting on for next week, and I think if there's any business that needs to be taken care of, we probably can just manage it before town meeting. I don't know, unless people feel otherwise. There we go.
Yeah, so if you're not having that meeting until the day of town meeting, then we definitely need to nail down who's doing what. So we have plenty of time to do that. Let me see, is that
just on your earlier point, it might be something interesting to bring to Jason as he's on this project. I think that that's a really great thing to integrate into the anti-racism project, and how we're going to communicate it, but also how it kind of becomes ingrained in what we do as a town. Be interesting to see that.
So Lisa had put up on the screen what I think was circulated initially. If there are any if there's anything else anybody wants to do, here, just feel free to speak up or email. Substantively, we don't have a ton this time. And the other, normally where we would recommend favorable action on certain things, we're going to provide that like we did last time to the moderator, and he's just going to read them off himself. So I know he's going to give us a very short leash on our articles, and our presentations on the Washington Street in particular, but on Waterfield, we're going to have probably some additional contributors to those as well to kind of squeeze into the recording. So I don't know if there's.
Do we know the timeline for when we have to go to WinCam or prepare the recording?
I don't know. I guess it's got to be soon though, right?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Article 21, we don't need to, it's part of the consent agenda, right? So do we need to do that?
Oh, yeah.
16 and 21, actually.
Yeah. I think 20, I mean, personally, I think 21 speaks for itself, but I can be prepared. I don't know. Yeah.
So I'll be prepared to answer some questions. It's, town meeting is asked questions about, these revolving funds before. And it may be that the background is enough, but, we might not have to, present anything in particular, but certainly, we can speak to that if asked. Any other questions on these? And you don't have to make a decision right now, but
I was looking forward to mine. I think I'm going to make it very brief, but I think it'll be a feel-good situation for the town meeting. I mean, I will make Article 15 is kind of straightforward, so mine would be pretty short, despite its importance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good one to actually speak to. It's an opportunity to do something good.
All right. Any other questions or anything? We can get
So
going unless anybody has anything else.
So I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, I'll take a roll call vote. Mariano?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And yes for me, motion carries unanimously 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, WinCam. Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate it. And we'll see everyone soon. And if there are other questions about the scheduling, Lisa, we probably can figure out what to do with the recording. Certain things don't necessarily have to be recorded at WinCam. Certainly someone can record them at home and send them in, but maybe for some other things we might need to. So.
And so we'll just stay posted as far as what time our meeting pre-town meeting is. We'll kind of do the same thing we did in the spring. We just have a separate Zoom. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Good meeting.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.